A trembling voice breaks the silence. A pregnant maid falls to her knees and whispers, "Please, don't kick me. I'm already hurt." But instead of cruelty, something unbelievable happens. The cold billionaire everyone fears defends her. In front of everyone, he fires his own fiancée and carries the maid out into the storm himself. From that night on, their lives are never the same, because behind that one act of mercy lies a secret that could destroy them both. A storm of lies, scandal, and heartbreak is about to test how far compassion can go before it breaks. Was his kindness a moment of guilt, or the beginning of something he's willing to risk everything for? And when the world turns against them, will love, faith, and truth be enough to save them both? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow across the marble floors of Hunter Cross's mansion, their light dancing off champagne flutes and designer gowns. The autumn evening had settled into a comfortable chill outside, but inside, the air buzzed with the quiet energy of Seattle's elite gathering for the annual charity dinner. Amara Johnson moved through the crowd like a shadow, her black uniform helping her blend into the background as she balanced a heavy crystal tray of champagne. Her stomach churned, and she fought to keep her breathing steady as another wave of nausea washed over her. She hadn't been able to keep much down lately, and the long hours on her feet were taking their toll. Just a few more hours, she whispered to herself, weaving between clusters of guests discussing stock portfolios and summer homes. The weight of their wealth pressed down on her shoulders as heavily as the tray in her trembling hands. The magnificent foyer sparkled with decoration. Autumn-themed centerpieces adorned every surface, their rich oranges and deep reds perfectly coordinated with the evening's sophisticated atmosphere. But Amara barely noticed the beauty anymore. Her focus remained on staying upright, on keeping her hands steady despite her exhaustion. A sharp laugh cut through the gentle murmur of conversation. Veronica Blake stood near the grand staircase, commanding attention in a fitted red designer dress that probably cost more than Amara made in a year. Hunter's fiancée held court among a group of admiring guests, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on Hunter's arm. Amara tried to skirt around them, but Veronica's voice rang out. "Oh, there you are. We need more champagne over here." Taking a deep breath, Amara turned toward the group. The room seemed to tilt slightly as she approached, and she blinked hard, trying to focus. Just as she extended the tray toward Veronica, a wave of dizziness struck. Her hands trembled violently. The crystal tray slipped. Time seemed to slow as it fell, the champagne flutes toppling like expensive dominoes. The crash echoed through the foyer, silencing all conversation. Glass shattered across the marble floor in a spray of crystal and champagne. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amara stood frozen, staring at the mess at her feet, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. "You clumsy, worthless girl!" Veronica's voice cracked like a whip in the silence. She stepped forward, her stilettos crunching on broken glass. "I told Hunter we should have hired professional servers, not some worthless servant who can't even stand straight." Amara stumbled backward, her shoes slipping on the wet marble. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. Please don't kick me out. I'm already hurt." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, heavy with the weight of her hidden circumstances. The crowd watched in tense silence, their expressions ranging from pity to disdain. Several people turned to Hunter, expecting him to support his fiancée's outburst. He had been standing quietly, observing the scene with an unreadable expression. Now he stepped forward, his movements deliberate and controlled. But instead of addressing Amara, he turned to Veronica. His voice, when it came, was quiet, but carried clearly through the silent room. "That's enough, Veronica." Veronica blinked, her perfect composure slipping for just a moment. "But Hunter, surely you can see—" "What I see," he cut her off, his tone arctic, "is someone showing their true character." He surveyed the room, his gaze sweeping over the watching crowd. "And it's not the person who dropped the tray." Veronica's face flushed dark red. "You can't be serious. Are you actually defending the help?" "The help, as you so dismissively call her, has shown more grace in her embarrassment than you have in your supposed superiority." Hunter's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the calm. "I've watched you treat the staff with contempt for months, Veronica. I've seen the facade you present to the world and the cruelty you display when you think no one important is watching. Well, I'm watching now." The silence in the room grew heavier with each word. Veronica's perfectly painted lips parted in shock. "You're fired, Veronica, from both your position at the company and your position in my life. Please leave." The words fell like stones into still water. Several guests actually gasped. Veronica stood rigid, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. "You'll regret this," she hissed, gathering her designer purse. "I promise you'll regret choosing some pathetic maid over me." She turned on her heel and stormed towards the door, the crowd parting before her like water. The slam of the heavy front door echoed through the mansion. Hunter turned to address the stunned guests, his voice firm but polite. "I think it's best if we end the evening here. Thank you all for coming, and for your continued support of the Children's Hospital." The guests filed out in uncomfortable silence, their whispers already spinning the evening's drama into tomorrow's society gossip. House staff appeared efficiently to clean up the broken glass, and soon the grand foyer stood empty and quiet. Later that night, in the small servants' quarters at the back of the mansion, Amara sat on her narrow bed, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The events of the evening played over and over in her mind, the crash of breaking glass, the public humiliation, the shocking confrontation between Hunter and Veronica. Her hands moved protectively to her stomach, still flat enough to hide beneath her uniform. "What am I going to do?" she whispered into the darkness. The question hung unanswered in the quiet room, heavy with the weight of her uncertain future. Outside her window, the autumn wind rustled through the trees, carrying away the last traces of the evening's drama. But inside, Amara remained awake, her tears falling silently as she wondered if her moment of weakness would cost her everything she'd worked so hard to protect. The autumn dawn crept through Amara's window, painting her small room in shades of grey. She hadn't slept much. Her eyes felt swollen from crying, and her stomach churned with its usual morning sickness. But she knew what she had to do. With trembling hands, she smoothed her uniform one last time before folding it carefully on her narrow bed. The crisp black fabric and white apron represented everything she'd worked for. Stability, safety, a chance to start over. Now, like so many times before, she would have to find another way. Amara pulled out a sheet of paper from her worn notebook and began to write. "Dear Mr. Cross, thank you for your kindness last night. I am deeply sorry for the disruption I caused. Please accept my resignation, effective immediately. Sincerely, Amara Johnson." She read it over, fighting back fresh tears. The words seemed inadequate, but anything more might reveal too much. Setting the note atop her folded uniform, she gathered her few belongings into her old backpack. The hallway was still dark when she stepped out, closing her door softly behind her. But as she turned toward the service stairs, she froze. Hunter Cross stood at the end of the corridor, his tall frame silhouetted against the window. He held 2 steaming mugs. "Going somewhere, Miss Johnson?" Amara's heart hammered in her chest. She instinctively stepped back, one hand moving to protect her stomach. "Mr. Cross, I was just—" "Running away?" His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. He walked toward her, extending one of the mugs. "It's ginger tea. Good for morning sickness." The blood drained from Amara's face. "How did you—" "I overheard what you said last night about being hurt already." He gestured with the mug. "Please, take it." Her hands shook as she accepted the tea. The warmth seeped into her cold fingers, and the spicy scent of ginger helped settle her churning stomach. "Thank you, but I should still go. After last night, you need rest and proper medical care." Hunter's tone turned stern, though his eyes remained kind. "I've already called Dr. Martinez, our house physician. She'll be here at 9 o'clock to check on you." "Mr. Cross, I can't accept—" Amara began, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "This isn't charity, Miss Johnson. It's basic human decency." He paused, something flickering across his usually composed features. "And perhaps it's also my way of making amends for not noticing Veronica's behavior sooner." Amara stared into her tea, overwhelmed by the kindness in his voice. "I'll find a way to repay you. The only repayment I want is for you to take care of yourself and your child." He checked his watch. "Dr. Martinez will see you in my study. Mrs. Darlene will show you there when it's time." Before Amara could respond, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the quiet hallway. She stood there for a long moment, sipping the tea that somehow tasted of both compassion and confusion. Later that morning, as Amara made her way downstairs, whispers followed her like shadows. The other staff members clustered in corners, their conversations dying when she passed. In the kitchen, she caught fragments of their gossip. Probably planned the whole thing, trying to trap him, just like those girls on television. Each whispered word felt like a small cut. Amara kept her head down, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. She'd learned long ago that defending herself only made things worse. As she passed the laundry room, a familiar voice called out, "Child, come help me fold these sheets." Mrs. Darlene stood in the doorway, her grey hair neat beneath its cap, her dark face creased with kindness. Amara gratefully slipped into the warm room, breathing in the clean scent of fresh laundry. "Don't you pay those gossips any mind?" Mrs. Darlene said, handing her the corner of a sheet. "They're just scared because kindness makes them uncomfortable, shows up their own meanness, you see." Amara tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "They're right, though, aren't they? I'm just causing trouble, making everything complicated." Mrs. Darlene snapped the sheet with practiced efficiency. "Let me tell you something, child. Sometimes God hides blessings inside humiliation, like a pearl inside an ugly oyster. You think that oyster knows what it's carrying?" "I don't understand," Amara admitted, carefully folding her corner. "You don't have to understand right now. Just remember, shame is what the world gives us, but dignity is what God sees in us." The older woman patted her hand. "Now it's almost 9 o'clock. Let's get you to that doctor." The morning passed in a blur of medical questions and gentle examinations. Dr. Martinez was kind but professional, prescribing prenatal vitamins and rest. Through it all, Amara felt as if she were watching, herself from a distance, still unable to believe this wasn't some elaborate dream. That night, lying in her bed, Amara stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. The day's events played on repeat. Hunter's unexpected kindness, the staff's cruel whispers, Mrs. Darlene's wisdom, the doctor's care. Her hand rested on her stomach, where her tiny secret grew stronger each day. "Can I trust this?" she whispered to the darkness. "Can kindness be real in a world that's shown me so much cruelty?" The autumn wind whistled outside her window, offering no answer. Somewhere in the big house, a clock chimed midnight. Amara turned onto her side, pulling her blanket tighter around her shoulders. Sleep felt far away, but for the first time in months she wasn't crying herself toward it. The tea Hunter had brought her sat cold on her nightstand, the cup a tangible reminder that something had shifted in her world. Whether that shift was toward hope or heartbreak, only time would tell. For now, all she could do was rest in this strange moment of grace, this unexpected kindness that felt both like a gift and a test. 2 days of whispers had worn Amara down like water on stone. Every sideways glance, every hushed conversation that stopped when she entered a room, every pitying look from Mrs. Darlene, it all pressed down on her shoulders until she could barely stand straight. The morning sky matched her mood, heavy with grey clouds that promised rain. Amara moved through her tiny room in the servants' quarters, carefully folding her few possessions into a worn cloth bag. Her fingers trembled as she packed away the 3 photographs she owned. One of her mother, gone 5 years now, one of her father before he'd walked away, and one of herself at graduation, back when she'd believed life would be different. She wrote a note, her handwriting neat despite her shaking hands. "Dear Mr. Cross, thank you for your kindness. I'm sorry, but I can't accept more than I've already taken. Please know how grateful I am." The mansion hummed with breakfast preparations downstairs. Pots clanged in the kitchen, and the smell of coffee drifted up through the old heating vents. Perfect timing. Everyone would be too busy to notice her slip away. Amara shouldered her bag and took one last look at the small room that had been her home for the past 8 months. Then she closed the door quietly behind her and made her way down the back stairs, careful to skip the 3rd step that always creaked. The air outside felt thick and heavy, pressing against her skin like a wet blanket. Thunder growled in the distance as Amara hurried down the service path toward the main gate. Her stomach churned, morning sickness or nerves, she couldn't tell anymore. The first drops of rain began to fall as she reached the elaborate iron gates. Fat, cold drops that seemed to target her specifically, soaking through her thin jacket. Lightning split the sky, so close it made her jump. The thunder that followed shook the ground beneath her feet. Pain knifed through her lower abdomen, sharp and sudden. Amara gasped, doubling over. Her bag slipped from her shoulder, spilling its contents across the wet gravel. Another bolt of lightning illuminated the scene like a cruel spotlight. Her few possessions getting soaked in the mud, her hands clutching her stomach, her face contorted in fear. "Please," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was talking to God or her unborn child. "Please, not now." The rain fell harder, drumming against her back as she tried to breathe through the pain. Through the curtain of water, she saw headlights approaching, cutting through the gloom like searchlights. The black SUV pulled up beside her, and before she could move, Hunter Cross was out of the driver's seat, rain plastering his usually perfect hair to his forehead. "Miss Johnson." His voice carried over the storm. "What are you doing out here?" Another wave of pain hit, and Amara's knees buckled. Hunter caught her before she hit the ground, one arm around her waist, the other supporting her shoulders. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms. "I'm getting your suit wet," she managed to say, the words barely audible over the rain. "The suit doesn't matter." He carried her to the passenger side of the SUV, somehow managing to open the door while still holding her. "What matters is getting you to a hospital." The drive was a blur of windshield wipers, lightning flashes, and intermittent pain. Hunter drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding his phone to his ear as he called ahead to the hospital. His voice was calm, but carried an urgency that made Amara's heart race faster. "My wife," she heard him say into the phone, then correct himself. "My employee, She's pregnant and having severe abdominal pain." The emergency room doors opened before Hunter had fully stopped the car. A team with a wheelchair was waiting, and suddenly Amara found herself whisked away under bright fluorescent lights, surrounded by medical terminology she didn't understand. "Early contractions," she heard someone say. "Stress-induced. Need to stabilize. Blood pressure elevated." Through it all, she was aware of Hunter's presence, hovering just outside the treatment area. Every time she caught a glimpse of him between the medical staff, he was pacing, his hands clasped behind his back, his face set in lines of worry. Hours passed in a haze of monitors beeping and medications dripping through IV lines. The contractions slowly eased, but the doctors insisted on keeping her overnight for observation. As darkness fell outside the hospital windows, Amara felt herself drifting in and out of consciousness. During one of her wakeful moments, she heard two nurses talking quietly by the door. "That's Hunter Cross out there." One whispered, "Hasn't left all day. I remember him from when his wife was here." The other replied, "Such a tragedy. She didn't make it through the delivery." Amara's heart clenched at the words. She'd heard rumors about Hunter's past, but having it confirmed made her see his vigil in a new light. He wasn't just being kind to an employee, he was facing his own ghosts in this hospital corridor. When she next opened her eyes, the room was dark, except for the soft glow of monitors. And there, in the uncomfortable hospital chair beside her bed, sat Hunter Cross. His tie was loosened, his jacket draped over the chair back, his head tilted at an angle that would surely hurt in the morning. But he was there, steady and present, even in sleep. Amara felt tears well up in her eyes. She hadn't prayed properly in months, too angry at God for all the hardships, too ashamed of her circumstances. But now, looking at this unexpected guardian angel in a rumpled business suit, words of gratitude rose naturally to her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, both to God and to the sleeping man beside her. "Thank you for not letting me fall." The monitors beeped softly in the darkness. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a clean, quiet night. Amara closed her eyes, feeling truly safe for the first time in longer than she could remember. Hunter shifted in his sleep, his hand unconsciously moving closer to her bed, as if reaching out to protect her even in his dreams. In that moment, Amara realized that sometimes help comes not in the way we expect, but in the way we need, even if that help wears an expensive suit and carries the weight of his own past sorrows. Morning sunlight filtered through the hospital room's blinds, casting warm stripes across Amara's bed. She woke to find Hunter gone from his chair, though his jacket still hung over the back. Her muscles ached from the stress of yesterday, but the sharp pains had subsided. A nurse bustled in, her shoes squeaking against the polished floor. "Good morning, Miss Johnson. How are you feeling?" "Better," Amara said, trying to sit up straighter. "When can I be discharged?" "You're all set to go. Mr. Cross already handled the paperwork and billing this morning." Amara's heart dropped. "He what?" "Oh yes, took care of everything first thing. Such a gentleman." The nurse helped Amara sit up fully and handed her a small stack of papers. "Here are your discharge instructions and prescriptions." Hunter returned just then, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. He'd clearly gone home to change. His suit was fresh, his hair neatly combed. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering her one of the cups. "Mr. Cross, I can't let you pay for my hospital stay. It's too much." Amara's voice shook slightly. Hunter pulled up his chair and sat, his expression serious. "Miss Johnson, Amara, please listen. What you did yesterday, trying to leave quietly to spare everyone trouble, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" she asked softly. "Compassion. Real compassion, not the kind that comes with tax write-offs and charity galas. He took a slow sip of his coffee. My wife Catherine had that same quality. She'd give her last dollar to help someone, never thinking twice about herself. Amara watched his face soften at the memory. Still, I need to repay you somehow. Actually, I have a proposition. Hunter set his coffee aside. I own a lake house about an hour from here. It's peaceful, private, and honestly, it's just sitting empty most of the time. I'd like you to stay there until you're fully recovered. Mr. Cross, I couldn't possibly. The doctor said you need rest and zero stress for at least 2 weeks. His tone was gentle but firm. The mansion staff will only cause you more anxiety right now. The lake house is the perfect solution. Amara looked down at her hands, wrestling with her pride. The offer was incredibly generous, but accepting felt like admitting defeat somehow. Tell you what, Hunter continued. Think about it while we get your things packed. Mrs. Darlene offered to help. As if on cue, Mrs. Darlene appeared in the doorway, her warm presence filling the sterile hospital room. There's my girl, she said, coming over to give Amara a careful hug. Lord works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? While Hunter stepped out to handle the discharge paperwork, Mrs. Darlene helped Amara change into fresh clothes she'd brought from the mansion. I don't know what to do, Amara confessed as she buttoned her blouse. It feels wrong to accept so much help. Mrs. Darlene's hands stilled as she folded Amara's hospital gown. Child, let me tell you something. When two paths cross unexpectedly, especially in times of trouble, that's not coincidence. That's divine intervention. You really think so? I've been watching Mr. Cross these past few years, seeing him close himself off more and more after losing Catherine. Mrs. Darlene's voice was thoughtful. But yesterday, when he carried you in from that rain, that was the first time I've seen real life in his eyes since she passed. Amara thought about Hunter's quiet vigil by her bedside. He's been very kind. There's something divine in this crossing of paths. Mrs. Darlene said firmly, Don't let pride stand in the way of God's planning. The drive to the lake house was quiet, with Hunter respectfully giving Amara space to rest. As they turned onto a private road, tall pines lined both sides, their branches creating a natural tunnel. When they emerged, Amara gasped. The lake stretched out before them, perfectly still in the morning light. The house itself was smaller than she'd expected, a beautiful 2-story cabin built of rich wood and stone. Windows wrapped around the entire structure, bringing nature inside. It's beautiful, she breathed. Hunter's smile was tinged with sadness. Catherine designed it. She wanted a place where you could feel at peace just by looking out the window. Inside, the house was simply but elegantly furnished. Natural light poured in from every direction, and the scent of pine permeated the air. In the corner of the main room stood a baby grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the lake view. That was Catherine's too, Hunter said quietly. I haven't had the heart to play it since... Amara moved toward the instrument, drawn by its presence. Without thinking, she began to hum softly. Amazing Grace, the hymn her grandmother had taught her years ago. Hunter stood very still, listening. After a moment, he walked over and sat on the piano bench, leaving space beside him. Amara carefully sat down, continuing to hum the familiar melody. The notes floated in the sunlit room, mingling with dust motes and lake reflections. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. In that moment, they were united in understanding what it meant to lose something precious, and what it meant to find unexpected hope in the midst of loss. Amara's hand rested lightly on her stomach, protecting the new life growing there. Beside her, Hunter's shoulders had relaxed slightly, as if some invisible burden had lightened. Through the windows, the lake shimmered with possibility, reflecting back the fragile beauty of second chances. Mrs. Darlene's words echoed in Amara's mind. Something divine in this crossing of paths. Perhaps, she thought, accepting help wasn't admitting defeat after all. Perhaps it was simply making room for grace. The day slipped into a peaceful rhythm at the lake house. Morning sunlight would filter through the pine trees, casting dappled shadows across the wooden floors as Amara moved quietly through her new temporary home. Her morning sickness had finally begun to ease, allowing her to find joy in simple tasks again. In the kitchen, she discovered a sense of purpose in preparing small, nourishing meals. The act of cooking brought back memories of her grandmother's lessons, a pinch of this, a dash of that, and always a prayer of gratitude over the pot. She'd leave covered plates in the warming oven for Hunter, who would return from work to find the house filled with comforting aromas. "You don't have to cook for me," he'd insisted at first. "I know," she'd replied simply. "I want to." With her strength returning, Amara found herself drawn to the neglected flower beds that lined the wraparound porch. Years of minimal care had left them wild and overgrown, but she could see the potential beneath the tangles. Each morning, she would spend an hour or two carefully weeding and pruning, bringing order back to the chaos. The work gave her time to think about her younger sister, Maria, back home in Tennessee. The money she saved from not paying rent allowed her to send a little extra in her weekly envelope. "For your college books?" she wrote in her latest letter, knowing how hard Maria was working toward her nursing degree. Hunter, too, seemed to be finding his own healing rhythm at the lake house. She noticed he was spending less time at the office, often arriving home while the sun was still high. One afternoon, she watched from the kitchen window as he examined the old wooden swing that hung from a massive oak tree near the water's edge. The next day, he appeared with tools and supplies, meticulously replacing the worn ropes and sanding down the wooden seat. There was something touching about watching this powerful businessman, jacket off and sleeves rolled up, so carefully restoring something that could have easily been replaced. Their days developed an easy companionship, comfortable in its lack of pressure or expectations. Sometimes they would share meals on the porch, talking about simple things, the weather, the birds that visited the feeders, the way the lake changed colors with the sky. Other times they sat in peaceful silence, each lost in their own thoughts, but somehow less alone in sharing the quiet. One sunny afternoon, while Hunter was in town for meetings, Amara decided to check the mail. The walk to the end of the driveway was pleasant, wildflowers nodding in the breeze beside the gravel path. But as she opened the mailbox, her heart stopped. There, on the front page of the local newspaper, was a headline that made her blood run cold. "Billionaire rescues pregnant maid, secret affair." Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. The article was a masterpiece of insinuation and half-truths, painting a lurid picture of scandal and impropriety. It mentioned her collapse in the rain, her stay at the hospital, and her current residence at the lake house, all twisted into something tawdry and wrong. Sources close to the situation suggest this may not be the first time the wealthy entrepreneur has shown special interest in his household staff. The article read. Amara felt sick, knowing how these words would hurt Hunter's reputation. She was still standing there, paper clutched in her shaking hands, when Hunter's car turned into the driveway. One look at her face, and he was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped, striding toward her with concern. "Amara, what's wrong?" Wordlessly, she handed him the newspaper. She watched as his expression changed as he read. First confusion, then anger, his jaw tightening with each line. "Veronica did this," he said quietly, his voice controlled but full of cold certainty. Amara wrapped her arms around herself, feeling suddenly vulnerable in the open air. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Cross. Your reputation—" "Don't," He cut her off firmly. You have nothing to apologize for. This is exactly the kind of vindictive move I should have expected from her. A car drove slowly past the gate, and they both noticed the telephoto lens pointing their way through the passenger window. Hunter gently took Amara's elbow, guiding her back toward the house. They'll be circling like vultures now that the story's out, he said grimly. We should get inside. Throughout the afternoon, more vehicles appeared. News vans, photographers, curious onlookers. They parked along the public road near the property, cameras flashing whenever anyone moved near the windows. Amara drew the curtains, but couldn't shut out the knowledge that her presence here was causing such trouble. Thunder rumbled in the distance as evening approached, an echo of the storm that had brought her here. Hunter spent hours on the phone with his lawyers and PR team, his voice a low murmur from his home office. When he finally emerged, Amara was sitting in the window seat, her favorite spot for evening prayers. The first drops of rain were beginning to fall outside, pattering against the glass. I've had security posted at the gate, he told her, running a hand through his hair wearily. No one will get onto the property. You shouldn't have to deal with all this, Amara said softly. Your kindness shouldn't cost you so much. Hunter sat down across from her, his face serious in the gathering darkness. Listen to me, Amara. I made you a promise when I brought you here, to give you a safe place to heal. That promise doesn't change just because some people want to twist it into something ugly. But your business, your reputation, my reputation can handle it, he said firmly. I've weathered worse storms than this. What matters is keeping you and your baby safe and stress-free, just like the doctor ordered. Amara looked out at the rain, now falling steadily. Camera flashes still occasionally lit up the darkness beyond the gates, like artificial lightning. She pressed her hand against the cool glass and whispered a prayer for protection, for wisdom, for the strength to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The thunder rolled again, closer now, as the same storm that had once brought her to safety now seemed to herald a different kind of tempest brewing in both their lives. But as she watched Hunter's reflection in the window glass, his expression determined and protective, she felt a flutter of hope beneath her fear. Whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone. Dawn broke over the lake house with an unwelcome chorus of camera shutters and shouting voices. Amara peered through a gap in the curtains, her heart sinking at the sight below. The peaceful sanctuary of yesterday had transformed into a media circus overnight. Dozens of reporters and photographers crowded the mansion gates, their equipment glinting in the early morning sun. News vans lined the street, satellite dishes pointed skyward like metal flowers seeking light. Every few seconds, another flash went off as someone spotted movement behind the windows. Don't torture yourself watching them. Hunter's voice came from behind her. He stood in the doorway, already dressed in a crisp navy suit, holding 2 steaming coffee mugs. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd barely slept. I brought you decaf, he said, attempting a smile as he handed her one of the mugs, though I'm thinking we both could use something stronger to face this circus. Amara accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. How bad is it? Hunter's attempt at humor faded. It's extensive. Every major news outlet, tabloid, and gossip blog has picked up the story. My PR team has been working all night. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. They're issuing an official statement within the hour, denying the affair allegations and requesting privacy. Will that help? Amara asked softly. Honestly, it'll probably make things worse. Denials usually do. They just make people dig deeper. A commotion outside drew their attention. A new wave of excitement rippled through the crowd as a sleek, black car pulled up. Through the gates, they could see Veronica Blake emerging, immaculately dressed and wearing large designer sunglasses. Camera flashes exploded around her as she paused, playing to her audience. Hunter's jaw tightened. Right on schedule. They watched as Veronica held an impromptu press conference, her voice carrying faintly through the windows. She touched her heart dramatically, speaking with practiced vulnerability about her betrayal and heartbreak. I just never thought, they heard her say, her voice trembling perfectly, that the man I loved could do this to me, with a servant of all people. Amara stepped back from the window, her face burning with shame. Hunter immediately drew the curtains closed with a sharp motion. I'm so sorry, she whispered. This is all my fault. Stop that right now, Hunter said firmly. This is Veronica's doing, not yours. She's trying to destroy both of us because her pride was hurt. Throughout the day, the siege continued. Hunter's phone rang constantly with calls from business partners, board members, and concerned friends. Each time he answered, his voice grew more strained, though he maintained his composure. Amara felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage. Every window seemed to hide a camera lens. Every shadow could be someone trying to catch a glimpse of the pregnant maid who had allegedly seduced one of the country's most eligible bachelors. By evening, social media was ablaze with hashtags and theories. Online forums dissected every detail of Hunter's past, Amara's background, and Veronica's exclusive interviews. The story had taken on a life of its own, far beyond their control. Hunter ordered dinner delivered by his most trusted security team, but neither of them had much appetite. They sat in the living room, the TV muted but still showing news coverage of their scandal. I should leave, Amara said suddenly. Find somewhere else to stay until this dies down. Absolutely not, Hunter replied without hesitation. That's exactly what Veronica wants, to drive you away, to make you feel ashamed for accepting help. I won't let her win. His phone buzzed again. This time, when he looked at it, all the color drained from his face. Hunter? Amara asked worriedly. What is it? He set the phone down carefully, as if it might shatter. They're running a story comparing this to what happened with Lila. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken pain. Amara knew very little about Hunter's late wife, only that her death had left deep scars. Hunter stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back rigid with tension. For a long moment, he just stared out into the darkness. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. Lila she was everything good in my life. Pure light. But the media, they couldn't leave us alone. Every event, every decision, every minor detail of our lives became public property. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. When she got pregnant, we were so happy. But the pressure, the constant scrutiny. She was working on a huge charity project with me, and the press started claiming I was pushing her too hard, endangering her health with my ambition. Amara sat very still, hardly daring to breathe as Hunter continued. She lost the baby in her 4th month. The headlines were brutal. Billionaire's drive costs unborn child. Ambitious husband to blame. They printed lies about how I'd forced her to attend meetings instead of resting, how I'd chosen profit over her health. His voice broke. She never blamed me, but I never forgave myself. 6 months later, when she died giving birth to our 2nd child, that child died too. I shut down completely, buried myself in work, kept everyone at arm's length. Amara rose quietly and crossed the room to stand beside him. Without a word, she placed her hand gently over his where it rested against the window frame. Then maybe this time, she said softly, forgiveness has come back for you. Hunter turned to look at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. In that moment, they were just two broken people who understood each other's pain, the weight of judgment, the sting of public shame, the scars that never quite healed. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the distant camera flashes like fireflies in the darkness, each finding unexpected solace in the other's presence. The morning sun painted long shadows across the winding country road as Hunter's SUV turned onto a gravel driveway. Amara watched through the window as weathered fence posts rolled by, their peeling white paint catching the light like old bones. "Where are we?" she asked softly, taking in the sweeping fields dotted with wildflowers. Hunter's hands relaxed slightly on the steering wheel. "My childhood home, or what's left of it." The vehicle crested a gentle hill, revealing a two-story farmhouse standing proud against the sky. Though time had worn away its former glory, Amara could see the bones of something beautiful beneath the faded siding and sagging porch. "It's been empty for 15 years," Hunter explained, parking beneath an ancient oak tree. "After my parents passed, I couldn't bring myself to sell it, but I couldn't stay here either." They stepped out into the crisp morning air. Tall grass swayed around their ankles as they made their way toward the house. Amara noticed Hunter's expression soften as he looked up at the building's weathered face. "I've been thinking about this place lately," he said, his voice thoughtful, "about what it could become." He led her up the creaking porch steps and through the front door. Inside, sunlight streamed through dusty windows, illuminating hardwood floors that had once gleamed. The rooms were empty, save for sheet-covered furniture and memories. "It needs work," Hunter admitted, running a hand along a wall. "But I see something here, something important." Amara followed him through the house, noting the spacious rooms and high ceilings. Despite its neglect, there was warmth here, a sense of home that time hadn't erased. "I want to turn it into a refuge," Hunter said suddenly, turning to face her. "A safe place for single mothers who need help getting back on their feet. The kind of place that offers real support, not just temporary shelter." Amara's breath caught in her throat. Her hand instinctively went to her growing belly as memories flooded back. The women's shelter she'd managed before the hurricane took everything. The faces of mothers who'd found hope there, children who'd finally felt safe enough to laugh again. "Hunter," she whispered, emotion making her voice shake. "Your strength inspired this," he continued quietly. "Watching you face everything with such grace, it made me realize I could do more, should do more." Tears pricked at Amara's eyes. "I used to run a shelter," she confessed, "before I lost everything. It was my life's work." Hunter's eyes lit up. "I didn't know that." "We helped so many families," she said, looking around the room with new eyes. "Gave them a chance to rebuild their lives with dignity." Hunter pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and smoothed it out on a dusty windowsill. "I've been sketching some initial plans. Would you look at them with me?" They spent the next hour walking through the house together, their footsteps stirring up dust motes that danced in the sunbeams. Amara's social work experience brought fresh perspective to every room. "The kitchen could be teaching space," she suggested, her excitement growing. "Cooking classes, nutrition education, and this front room would make a perfect children's reading area." "What about the side yard?" Hunter asked, leading her outside. "I was thinking of gardens." "A prayer garden," Amara said immediately, then blushed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "No, it's perfect," Hunter interrupted, smiling. "A place for peace and reflection." They walked through knee-high wildflowers, pointing out possibilities. Hunter jotted notes on his paper as Amara described programs that had worked well at her old shelter. The next few days fell into a pleasant rhythm. They'd drive out to the farmhouse each morning, armed with notebooks and measuring tapes. Hunter brought in contractors for initial assessments, while Amara refined the interior layouts. One afternoon, they decided to tackle the ancient fence themselves. Armed with brushes and white paint, they worked side by side in comfortable silence. "You missed a spot," Amara teased, pointing with her brush. Hunter raised an eyebrow. "Did I? Where exactly?" She leaned forward to show him, losing her balance on the uneven ground. Hunter's arm shot out instantly, catching her waist. Time seemed to slow as she steadied herself against his chest, their faces inches apart. Amara felt her heart skip a beat as she met his eyes. The tenderness she saw there made her breath catch. Hunter's hand lingered at her waist, warm and steady. Neither moved, caught in a moment that hummed with unspoken feelings. The harsh ring of Hunter's phone shattered the silence. He released her slowly, reluctantly, and pulled out his phone. His expression darkened as he read the screen. "What is it?" Amara asked, her heart still racing. "My assistant," he said grimly. "The board has called an emergency meeting. They're citing ethical concerns." The warmth of the moment evaporated, replaced by a familiar chill of anxiety. Trouble was coming, again. The paint brushes hung forgotten in their hands as reality crashed back in, reminding them that their peaceful refuge was only temporary. The world beyond the wildflowers was still waiting, still ready to judge. The Grand Horizon Hotel's ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and gilded trim, a stark contrast to the tension filling the air. Hunter stood before the mirror in a private room, adjusting his bow tie with practiced fingers. "The press is already gathering outside," his assistant reported nervously. "Maybe we should consider postponing." "No." Hunter's voice was firm. "If we hide, we let the liars win. The shelter project matters more than gossip." Down the hall, in another preparation room, Amara smoothed her hands over the soft blue fabric of her dress, a gift from Mrs. Darlene that morning. The elderly housekeeper had presented it with tears in her eyes, saying, "You need something that matches your spirit, child." The dress was simple but elegant, with a flowing skirt that gracefully concealed her growing belly. Mrs. Darlene stood behind her now, pinning a white gardenia in her hair. "I don't know if I should be here," Amara whispered, watching the growing crowd through the window. "What if I make things worse for him?" Mrs. Darlene's warm hands squeezed her shoulders. "Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply show up. The truth has its own light, honey. Let it shine." The ballroom filled quickly with Atlanta's elite, business leaders, politicians, and philanthropists. Whispers followed every movement as Hunter greeted guests with his usual composure. When Amara entered, the whispers grew louder, but she held her head high, remembering Mrs. Darlene's words. Hunter's eyes found her immediately. His expression softened as he crossed the room to meet her. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, offering his arm. "Thank you for wanting me here," she replied, accepting his support, both literally and figuratively. The evening proceeded with careful formality. Dinner served on fine china, polite conversation masking curiosity. At precisely 8 o'clock, Hunter approached the podium. The room fell silent. "Good evening," he began, his voice strong and clear. "We're here tonight to discuss second chances, about seeing value in what others overlook." He paused, scanning the room. "The Cross Foundation's new Women's Shelter project represents more than just charitable giving. It represents hope. And I stand here tonight humbled to announce that this vision came from an extraordinary woman, someone who showed me what true grace looks like in the face of adversity." Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Hunter continued. "Amara Johnson worked in social services before circumstances brought her to my household. Her strength, Her unwavering compassion and her dignity in the face of cruel judgment inspired this project. She reminded me that real change starts with seeing people, truly seeing them. Tears gathered in Amara's eyes as Hunter gestured for her to join him. Her legs felt weak as she walked to the podium, but his steady hand at her elbow gave her courage. Amara will now share her vision for the shelter, Hunter announced, stepping aside. Amara faced the sea of faces, her heart pounding. Then she saw Mrs. Darlene in the back, nodding encouragement, and found her voice. "When I managed a women's shelter years ago," she began softly, "I learned that the hardest part of helping someone isn't providing food or shelter. It's restoring their sense of worth." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "Every day we pass women who feel invisible. The cleaning lady, the shop worker, the single mother trying to hide her struggles behind a brave smile. They don't need our pity. They need us to see their dignity, their potential." The room was completely silent now, hundreds of eyes fixed on her face. This shelter will be more than walls and rooms. It will be a place where women can rebuild their lives with pride, where their children can feel safe enough to dream again. Amara touched her stomach gently. Faith doesn't always come easy, but it never leaves us alone. Sometimes it arrives in unexpected moments, through unexpected people, reminding us that grace is still possible. The silence held for a heartbeat after she finished. Then applause erupted, genuine, enthusiastic applause. Several women wiped tears from their eyes. Even the most skeptical faces had softened. Camera flashes captured the moment as Hunter returned to the podium, his hand finding hers naturally. For one shining evening, their truth outshone the lies. The planned shelter received more pledges than they'd hoped for, with several prominent women offering to join the board. Later, as they walked to the car under the stars, Hunter kept hold of Amara's hand. "You were amazing tonight," he said softly. "We both were," she replied, squeezing his fingers. Neither noticed the photographer hidden in the shadows, his camera capturing their linked hands and intimate smiles. The moment of triumph would be brief. The next morning's headlines screamed across every tabloid. "Billionaire's secret romance exposed. Hand-holding proves ongoing affair with pregnant maid." The photo was everywhere, their clasped hands, their tender expressions caught in the hotel's golden light. What had felt like victory now looked like scandal preserved in print. The morning after the gala brought no peace. Hunter sat in his home office, staring at his phone as it buzzed relentlessly with messages from board members, investors, and reporters. Each notification felt like another nail in a coffin he hadn't meant to build. "Sir," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, "the board is requesting an emergency meeting at 10 o'clock. Hunter rubbed his temples. "Tell them I'll be there." The drive to his corporate headquarters felt longer than usual. Security had to clear a path through the crowd of reporters, shoving microphones and cameras at his car windows. Inside the building, whispers followed him down hallways where people used to greet him warmly. The boardroom was silent when he entered. 12 faces watched him take his seat, their expressions ranging from disappointment to barely concealed anger. Marcus Wheeler, the head of the board, spoke first. "Hunter, we've known each other for 15 years. I attended your wedding to Lila. I stood by you through her loss. But this..." He slid several tabloids across the polished table. "This is destroying everything you've built." The headlines screamed in bold text. "Cross Enterprises CEO's scandalous affair" and "Pregnant maid seduces billionaire." Beneath them were the photos from the gala, but also new ones, clearly edited images showing Hunter entering what appeared to be Amara's quarters late at night. "These are fake," Hunter said firmly, his jaw tight. "Veronica Blake is behind this. It doesn't matter who's behind it. Another board member cut in. The damage is done. 3 major investors pulled out this morning. Our stock has dropped 12%. The shelter project sponsors are backing away. Marcus leaned forward. We need you to step down temporarily, Hunter, just until this blows over. Hunter's hands clenched under the table. You want me to abandon ship because of lies? We want you to protect what you've built. Marcus replied. Take a leave of absence. Let things cool down. The meeting lasted another hour, but the decision was made. By afternoon, news outlets were reporting Hunter's temporary resignation. Veronica Blake appeared on a popular talk show, tears in her eyes as she described finding evidence of the affair months ago. When Hunter returned to the lake house, he found Amara in the garden, her face pale with worry. I saw the news, she said softly. I'm so sorry, Hunter. This is all my fault. He shook his head, taking her hands in his. No, this is Veronica's fault, and I won't let her destroy you too. But your company can survive without me for a while. He looked at her intently. But you need to leave town, Amara, at least until this dies down. Her eyes widened. Leave? No, I won't run away. We can fight this together. Tell the truth. The truth doesn't matter right now, Hunter said gently. They'll twist everything we say. Those photos may be fake, but they're convincing. The media is like sharks with blood in the water, and they'll tear you apart if you stay. Tears filled Amara's eyes. But what about the shelter project? What about everything we planned? It will wait. Right now, I need to know you and your baby are safe. His voice cracked slightly. I can't watch another woman I care about be destroyed by lies and public cruelty. Not again. Amara saw the pain in his eyes, understanding he was thinking of Lila. She wanted to argue more, but the desperation in his voice stopped her. This wasn't just about protecting her. It was about his own healing too. That night, she sat on the edge of her bed, watching moonlight dance across the lake's surface. The water seemed to hold all her questions, all her unspoken feelings. The past few weeks had given her something she'd never expected to find. Not just shelter, but belonging. The thought of leaving made her chest ache. She moved to the piano room, where she'd spent so many evenings singing while Hunter listened. Her fingers traced the keys without pressing them, remembering the hymns that had filled this space with hope. How strange that she'd found such peace in a place she was never meant to stay. Before the sun rose, Amara packed her small bag. She wrote a note with trembling hands. You gave me a home when I had none. Now it's my turn to protect you. The words felt inadequate for everything in her heart, but they were all she could offer. She left it on the piano, where she knew he would find it. As she walked towards the door, she paused at the threshold, looking back at the quiet house. Somewhere upstairs, Hunter slept, unaware that she was leaving. It was better this way. She wasn't sure she could go if she had to see the pain in his eyes again. The sky was just beginning to lighten as she closed the door behind her. Birds were starting their morning songs, and the lake reflected the first hints of dawn. Everything looked so peaceful, as if the world hadn't just turned upside down. Hunter woke hours later to an unusually quiet house. He called for Amara, his voice echoing through empty rooms. When he reached the piano room, he saw the note. His hands shook as he read it, the simple words blurring before his eyes. He sank onto the piano bench, the same spot where he'd sat countless evenings listening to Amara sing. The morning sun streamed through the windows, but the room felt darker somehow. In the silence, he could almost hear the echo of her last song, a hymn about faith and perseverance. The piano keys caught the sunlight, waiting for fingers that wouldn't return to play them. Hunter sat there for a long time, holding Amara's note, surrounded by the hollow sound of absence. The autumn chill seeped through Hunter Cross's lakehouse windows, but he barely noticed. 2 weeks had crawled by since Amara's departure, each day longer than the last. The morning sun cast long shadows across the piano keys, now gathering a thin layer of dust. Hunter's fingers traced the edge of the instrument, remembering how Amara's voice used to fill these empty spaces with warmth. His phone buzzed again, another message from his PR team about damage control. He ignored it. These days, he spent most of his time in his home office, buried in paperwork and emergency board meetings. Work was his escape, though it did little to quiet the ache in his chest. Mrs. Darlene brought him coffee, her weathered face creased with concern. "You need to eat something, Mr. Cross. You're working too hard." "I'm fine," he said automatically, not looking up from his laptop. "No, you're not," she replied softly. "Neither of you are." Hunter's hand stilled over the keyboard. "Have you heard from her?" Mrs. Darlene shook her head. "But I pray for her every day, and for you too." Across town, in a modest neighborhood far from the mansion's luxury, Amara Johnson arranged medical supplies at the women's clinic where she volunteered. Her loose sweater concealed her growing belly, though she could feel her baby's movements more strongly now. The clinic's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she organized pamphlets and tidied waiting room magazines. "You're doing it again," Sarah, another volunteer, said gently. "What?" Amara looked up, confused. "Hiding behind work. You've reorganized those pamphlets 3 times today." Amara managed a small smile. "Keeping busy helps." Her tiny rented room above the local laundromat wasn't much, but it was clean and quiet. She'd made it homey with a few potted plants and a second-hand rocking chair. At night, she avoided watching television, knowing Hunter's face might appear at any moment. But she couldn't help checking news websites, her heart heavy as she watched his company's stock prices fall. Meanwhile, cracks began appearing in Veronica's carefully constructed lies. An anonymous source contacted several major news outlets, suggesting that the compromising photos had been doctored. Digital forensics experts pointed out inconsistencies in the lighting and shadows. But the damage to Hunter's reputation was already done. His temporary resignation had become indefinite, and several major investors had pulled out of upcoming projects. One rainy evening, as Amara folded laundry in her room, the television in the laundromat below caught her attention. Hunter's voice drifted up through the thin floors. She crept downstairs, drawn despite herself. There he stood on the screen, looking, exhausted but determined. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his normally pristine suit slightly rumpled. "Ms. Johnson is a woman of integrity," he was saying firmly. "Any suggestion otherwise is not only false but cruel. I will continue to defend her name, regardless of the personal cost." Amara's hands trembled as she watched. He looked so tired, so worn down, yet he was still protecting her. The weight of his sacrifice pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. "You know him?" the laundromat owner asked, noticing her expression. "I used to," Amara whispered, then hurried back upstairs. In her room, she paced the small space, one hand resting on her belly. Her baby kicked, as if sensing her agitation. The rain tapped against her window, echoing her restless thoughts. "This isn't right," she said aloud. "He shouldn't have to carry this alone." She thought of Mrs. Darlene's words about God hiding blessings in humiliation. Maybe this was her moment to turn shame into strength. Hunter had given her shelter when she needed it most. Now she could give him back his reputation. Amara's hands shook as she picked up her phone, but her voice was steady as she scrolled through her contacts. She'd met Lisa Chen, a local reporter, at the women's clinic. Lisa had been kind, professional, and, most importantly, interested in truth rather than sensation. The phone rang 3 times before Lisa answered. "Hello." Amara took a deep breath. "Lisa, this is Amara Johnson. If you want the truth about Hunter Cross and me, I'm ready to tell it." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure? This could attract a lot of attention." "I'm sure," Amara said firmly. "The truth needs to be told." After ending the call, Amara moved to a small dresser where she'd been collecting baby items. She picked up a soft yellow blanket, a gift from one of the clinic nurses, and began folding it with careful hands. "Hold on, little one," she whispered, smoothing the blanket's corners. "Mama's going to make this right." The rain continued its gentle rhythm against her window as she prepared for bed, her mind already forming the words she would use to tell her story. Not just about Hunter's kindness, but about dignity, faith, and the quiet power of truth. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, she felt peace settling over her like a familiar hymn. She placed the folded blanket in her drawer, next to tiny socks and onesies. Her baby kicked again, stronger this time, and she smiled. Sometimes the bravest thing wasn't running away to protect someone. It was standing still and speaking up for them instead. The rain eased to a soft patter, harmonizing with the distant hum of the city. In her simple room, surrounded by the small treasures of her new life, Amara felt stronger than she had in weeks. Tomorrow would be difficult, but tonight she would rest, knowing she was finally doing what needed to be done. The morning dawned clear and crisp, a stark contrast to the storms of recent weeks. In her modest apartment, Amara stood before the mirror, smoothing her navy blue maternity dress. The fabric draped gently over her rounded belly, now clearly visible at 5 months. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened a simple pearl necklace, a loan from the kind-hearted nurse at the women's clinic. Lisa Chen had arranged for Amara to appear on Morning Light with Sarah Collins, one of the most respected morning shows in the country. The car arrived precisely at 6:30 in the morning, and Amara clutched her small purse, containing only her identification and a worn prayer card. At the television studio, makeup artists worked quietly, adding subtle touches to her face. One of them squeezed her shoulder gently. "You've got this, honey. Just tell your truth." The green room buzzed with activity, but Amara remained still, her hands folded over her belly, silently praying. When a production assistant called her name, she rose with quiet dignity, following him through the maze of corridors. The studio lights were bright, almost blinding, but Sarah Collins' warm smile put her at ease. The veteran broadcaster had a reputation for fairness and compassion. "We're live in 5, 4, 3. The director counted down silently with his fingers. Sarah turned to the camera with professional grace. "This morning, we have an exclusive interview with Amara Johnson, whose name has been at the center of recent controversies surrounding billionaire entrepreneur Hunter Cross. Ms. Johnson has come forward to tell her story in her own words." The camera turned to Amara, who sat straight-backed but not stiff, her hands resting gently on her belly. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. "Thank you for having me, Sarah. I've been silent for too long, letting others tell my story. It's time for the truth." Sarah leaned forward slightly. "Take us back to the beginning, Amara. How did you come to work at the Cross Mansion?" Amara took a deep breath. "I was running from an abusive relationship. My ex-boyfriend." Her voice caught slightly, but she pressed on. "He'd become violent when he learned I was pregnant. I needed somewhere safe, somewhere I could work and save money for my baby." The studio was absolutely silent as Amara continued, describing her early days at the mansion, the long hours, the way she tried to remain invisible. When she spoke of the night of the charity dinner, tears glimmered in her eyes but didn't fall. "The morning sickness was terrible that day. I shouldn't have been carrying the tray, but I was so afraid of losing my job. When I dropped it..." She paused, remembering. "Ms. Blake, Veronica, she saw an opportunity to humiliate me. She called me worthless, suggested I was drunk. But Mr. Cross, Hunter, he saw the truth. Sarah's own eyes had grown moist. And that's when he fired Veronica Blake? Yes. Amara nodded. He didn't know I was pregnant then. He just knew someone was being cruel to a person who couldn't defend themselves. That's who he really is. Someone who protects the vulnerable. As Amara recounted the following days, her collapse in the rain, Hunter's rescue, the shelter at the lake house, the studio crew had stopped pretending to be busy. Everyone was watching, transfixed by her quiet dignity. He never touched me inappropriately, Amara stated firmly, her voice stronger now. He never made advances or suggested anything improper. He gave me a safe place to stay when I had nowhere else to go. The photos Ms. Blake released were manipulated. The timestamps were altered. Sarah nodded. We've had digital experts examine those photos. They found evidence of tampering. He never wronged me, Amara said, and now her voice did tremble with emotion. He saved me. He saved my baby. And in return, his reputation was destroyed by lies. The interview continued as Amara described the Women's Shelter Project, her voice brightening as she spoke of Hunter's vision to help other women in crisis. When she mentioned Mrs. Darlene's wisdom and support, her smile was genuine. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Your strength is remarkable, Amara. What made you decide to come forward now? Because sometimes staying silent to protect someone actually hurts them more, Amara replied. Hunter Cross lost so much trying to protect me. It was time for me to protect him with the truth. As the segment ended, Sarah reached over and squeezed Amara's hand. Thank you for your courage in sharing your story with us today. The impact was immediate. Before Amara had even left the studio, social media was ablaze with support. Istand with Amara began trending, followed quickly by Hunter Cross Hero. Clips from the interview were shared thousands of times within hours. Throughout the day, more voices joined the chorus. Former staff members from the mansion came forward, confirming Amara's account of events. The head chef described Hunter's quiet generosity toward all his employees. The gardener shared stories of Amara's gentle presence and work ethic. But it was Mrs. Darlene's appearance on an afternoon news show that truly turned the tide. The elderly housekeeper sat regally in her church clothes, her grey hair perfectly arranged, as she spoke with maternal authority. I've worked for the Cross family for 20 years, she stated firmly. I know goodness when I see it, and both Amara Johnson and Hunter Cross have it in abundance. That young woman has been through more than most could bear, but she never lost her faith or her dignity. And Mr. Cross? He did exactly what a Christian gentleman should do. He helped someone in need, regardless of the cost to himself. In his office, Hunter sat alone, watching the coverage unfold on multiple screens. His assistant had cancelled all his meetings, understanding the importance of this day. As he watched Amara tell their story, saw the genuine emotion in her eyes, his own filled with tears, when she said, "He never wronged me. He saved me." Hunter lowered his head, his shoulders shaking slightly. "Thank you, Lord," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for sending her." For the first time in weeks, the weight of scandal and accusation began to lift from his shoulders. The truth, spoken in Amara's gentle voice, was finally being heard. As the sun set over the city, Hunter remained in his office, watching the story spread, watching truth triumph over lies, watching grace overcome scandal. 3 days after Amara's television appearance, the truth emerged like sunrise after a long night. Digital forensics experts hired by the network released their findings in a detailed report. The photographs Veronica had leaked, supposedly showing late-night encounters between Hunter and Amara, had been skillfully manipulated. Time-stamps had been altered, shadows adjusted, and contexts completely fabricated. The evidence was damning. Email trails revealed coordination between Veronica's public relations team and certain tabloid editors. They had orchestrated the entire scandal, timing releases for maximum damage to Hunter's reputation. Hunter sat in his office, reading the report for the third time. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages, not from anger, but from a profound sense of vindication. His assistant, Jenny, knocked softly before entering with a stack of newspapers. "Sir, every major outlet is covering the story," she said, laying them on his desk. "The board members who pushed for your resignation are calling to apologize." Hunter nodded, his eyes scanning the headlines. "Cross vindicated, scandal photos proven fake, Blake PR team caught in manipulation scandal, Billionaire's ex-fiancé behind smear campaign." Outside his office building, reporters clustered like moths around a flame, waiting for Veronica Blake to emerge from her downtown publicity firm. When she finally appeared, her usual polish had cracked. Her designer suit was slightly wrinkled. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the darkness under her eyes. "Ms. Blake, what's your response to the forensics report? Did you personally approve the photo manipulation? Will you apologize to Mr. Cross and Ms. Johnson?" Veronica tried to push through the crowd, but the questions kept coming. Finally, she snapped, whirling to face the cameras with eyes blazing. "He threw away a diamond for a servant," she snarled, her voice sharp with contempt. "I gave him class, connections, everything he needed. And he chose that. That nothing." The moment the words left her mouth, Veronica seemed to realize her mistake. But it was too late. Cameras captured every syllable, every twist of disdain on her face. Within hours, the clip went viral, drawing widespread condemnation. Social media exploded with support for Amara. People shared their own stories of workplace discrimination, of overcoming classism, of finding dignity in honest work. The very cruelty of... Veronica's words had transformed Amara into a symbol of grace under pressure. As evening approached, rain began falling over the city. Hunter left his office early, declining his driver's offer to take him home. Instead, he drove himself to a modest neighborhood across town where small houses stood close together and children's bicycles lay trusted on front lawns. He parked his car at the corner and walked the last block, letting the rain soak through his expensive suit. The droplets mixed with streetlight created halos around the house numbers until he found the one he was looking for, 212. A small window glowed warm yellow against the grey evening. Hunter stood on the sidewalk, water running down his face, suddenly uncertain. What if she didn't want to see him? What if she'd moved on, preferring the quiet life she'd built here? What if... Before he could finish the thought, the front door opened. Amara stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her rounded belly, her face soft with knowing. Somehow she had sensed he would come. "You'll catch your death out there," she said quietly, stepping aside in clear invitation. Hunter climbed the 3 steps slowly, drinking in the sight of her. She wore a simple cotton dress, her hair wrapped in a colorful scarf. Her pregnancy had progressed beautifully. She seemed to glow from within. Inside, her small apartment was neat and warm, filled with the scent of herbs and fresh bread. A few second-hand furniture pieces had been arranged with care. On one wall hung a cross with a Bible verse written beneath it. "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." "Let me get you a towel," Amara said, but Hunter gently caught her hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "What you did, going public like that, I know how hard it must have been." Amara squeezed his hand. "You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me shelter when I had nothing." The truth was the least I could give in return. She led him to a small kitchen table where a kettle was already warming. "I thought you might come," she explained, bringing out 2 mugs. "Mrs. Darlene always said tea makes everything better." Hunter smiled at the mention of the housekeeper. "She's been calling me every day to read me social media updates. I think she's more invested in clearing our names than we are." "She's a warrior in sensible shoes." Amara laughed softly, pouring the tea. They sat together while the rain painted patterns on the window glass. Neither felt the need to fill the silence with words. After so much noise, so many headlines and accusations, the quiet felt like a blessing. Hunter watched as Amara absently rubbed her belly, humming something under her breath. It was the same hymn she used to play on his wife's piano at the lake house. The memory squeezed his heart. "I missed you," he said simply. Amara looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I missed you too, every day. But I had to leave. I couldn't bear watching them destroy you because of me." "They didn't destroy me," Hunter replied. "They tried, but they didn't understand what they were really attacking. It wasn't about reputation or money. It was about doing what's right, about remembering who I am supposed to be." Outside, the rain began to soften, turning from steady drumming to gentle whispers. The streetlights created patterns on the kitchen floor, and somewhere nearby, wind chimes sang their quiet song. "The women's shelter," Amara said suddenly. "What happens now?" Hunter's face brightened. "Construction starts next week. The publicity actually brought in more donors. Sometimes God really does work in mysterious ways." Amara nodded, remembering Mrs. Darlene's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. Sometimes God hides blessings inside humiliation. They finished their tea in companionable silence, listening to the gentle symphony of rain and wind chimes. The world outside, with its headlines and scandals and judgments, seemed very far away. In this small kitchen, with steam rising from their mugs and peace settling around their shoulders, they had found something rare and precious. A moment of perfect understanding, of gratitude, of healing. The truth had finally triumphed, not with shouts and accusations, but with quiet dignity and unwavering faith, just as Amara had always believed it would. The autumn leaves had begun their dance of gold and crimson when Hunter helped Amara move into the new house. It was a charming 2-story home with white trim and dark blue shutters, just 10 minutes from the women's clinic where she volunteered. The neighborhood was quiet, filled with young families and tree-lined streets, perfect for morning walks. "You really didn't have to do all this," Amara protested as movers carried in her few belongings. She stood on the wraparound porch, one hand supporting her back, the other resting on her very pregnant belly. Hunter gave her a look that brooked no argument. The apartment was too small, and those stairs were getting dangerous. Besides, he added softly, this place needed someone to bring it back to life. The house had been empty for months, but Hunter had spent weeks having it renovated. Fresh paint brightened every room, and new hardwood floors gleamed in the autumn sunlight. The kitchen sparkled with updated appliances, and the nursery. The nursery was a labor of love. Mrs. Darlene had helped choose the soft yellow paint for the walls, saying it reminded her of sunshine and hope. Hunter had personally installed white wooden blinds and hung gauzy curtains that danced in the breeze. A plush rocking chair sat in one corner, next to a bookshelf already filled with children's stories. But it was the cradle that brought tears to Amara's eyes. Hunter had found it at an antique shop, solid cherry wood with delicate hand-carved details. He'd spent evenings refinishing it himself, sanding away old paint to reveal the beautiful grain beneath. Now it stood beside Amara's bed, ready and waiting. "It's perfect," she whispered, running her fingers along the smooth wood. "Just perfect." The weeks passed in a gentle rhythm. Hunter visited often, bringing groceries or simply sitting with Amara on the porch swing he'd installed. They talked about the women's shelter, now rising steadily from its foundation, and shared quiet dreams for the future. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood children play across the street. Mrs. Darlene came by every few days, armed with casseroles and wisdom. She taught Amara how to knit tiny booties and shared stories of raising her own children. "A baby," she would say, patting Amara's hand, "is God's way of saying the world should go on." One particularly warm evening in late October, Amara was folding baby clothes when the first pain hit. She breathed through it, the way her birthing classes had taught her. But when the second came harder and faster, she knew it was time. Her hands trembled as she dialed Hunter's number. He answered on the first ring. "Hunter," she managed between breaths. "It's happening." "Don't move." His voice was steady but urgent. "I'm 5 minutes away." True to his word, headlights swept across her front window exactly 5 minutes later. Hunter bounded up the porch steps and found Amara leaning against the wall, face tight with concentration. "I've got you," he said softly, wrapping one arm around her waist. "Just lean on me." The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and breathing exercises. Hunter kept one hand on the wheel and the other held firmly in Amara's grasp. Every time a contraction hit, he would count steadily, helping her through each wave of pain. The hospital corridors were bright and busy, but Hunter's presence created a bubble of calm. He spoke quietly but firmly with nurses, ensuring Amara got immediate attention. Within minutes, she was settled in a private room, monitors beeping steadily. "I'm scared," she admitted as another contraction gripped her. "What if something goes wrong?" Hunter's face tightened for a moment, old memories threatening to surface, but he pushed them away, focusing on Amara's needs. "Nothing will go wrong," he said with quiet conviction. "You're the strongest person I know, and this baby is already blessed with the most amazing mother." Hours passed in a rhythm of pain and rest. Hunter never left Amara's side, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, feeding her ice chips, and murmuring encouragement. When things got intense, he held her hand and prayed with her, their voices joining in whispered faith. Near midnight, the doctor announced it was time. Amara's eyes went wide with fear and determination. Hunter positioned himself behind her, supporting her back, his strength flowing into her. "You can do this," he whispered. "We're right here, with you." The next 30 minutes were a symphony of effort and encouragement. Amara's face shone with sweat and tears as she worked to bring her child into the world. Hunter's voice remained steady, counting breaths, offering strength. And then, cutting through the tension like a shaft of sunlight, came the strong, clear cry of a newborn baby. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, holding up a tiny, perfect being with curls of dark hair. Tears streamed down Amara's face as they placed the baby on her chest. "Hello, my love," she whispered. "Hello, Faith." Hunter's breath caught. "Faith?" Amara looked up at him, her eyes bright with joy and exhaustion. "Faith, because she's what kept me alive. Through everything, every dark night, every moment of doubt, Faith carried me through. And now here she is, my living, breathing Faith." The nurses cleaned and wrapped the baby before bringing her back. Hunter stood watching, his heart so full it ached as Amara cradled her daughter. Then, with gentle hands, she held Faith out to him. "Would you like to hold her?" Hunter's hands trembled as he took the tiny bundle. Faith's eyes opened, deep brown like her mother's, and seemed to look straight into his soul. Tears he couldn't hold back tracked down his face. "Welcome to the world, little Faith," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. He touched one finger to her perfect tiny hand, and she gripped it firmly, as if making a promise. Amara watched them from her hospital bed, her heart overflowing with gratitude and love. "You've got your family back, Mr. Cross," she said softly. Hunter looked up, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that took her breath away. He shook his head gently, still cradling Faith. "No, Amara, we both do." Faith made a small sound of contentment, settling deeper into Hunter's arms. Outside the window, the first light of dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of hope. In that quiet moment, surrounded by beeping monitors and the soft breathing of a newborn, something profound and beautiful settled into place. They were no longer two broken people finding shelter in each other's kindness. They were a family, forged in faith, strengthened by truth, and blessed by the tiny miracle sleeping peacefully between them. The autumn morning dawned clear and bright, painting the newly constructed Faith's Haven Women's Shelter in golden light. The fresh white paint gleamed, and colourful flowers lined the renovated walkways where the old farmhouse had once stood abandoned. A modest crowd gathered on the newly laid lawn, their excited whispers filling the crisp air. Amara stood near the entrance, gently rocking 1-month-old Faith in her arms. The baby wore a pale yellow dress that Mrs. Darlene had lovingly made by hand, tiny ruffles dancing in the morning breeze. Faith's dark curls had grown thicker, and her bright eyes took in the world with quiet wonder. "She looks just like an angel," Mrs. Darlene whispered, adjusting the baby's tiny bow. Her weathered hands were gentle as she smoothed Faith's dress. "The Lord surely knew what he was doing when he brought you all together." Amara smiled, watching as Hunter moved through the small crowd, greeting each person with genuine warmth. He'd shed his usual business suit for a more casual blue button-down and khakis, looking more at peace than she'd ever seen him. The past month had transformed him. The weight of old guilt had lifted from his shoulders, replaced by a quiet joy that showed in everything he did. The shelter itself was a testament to healing. What had started as Hunter's childhood farmhouse was now a beautiful 2-story haven, with warm brick walls and large windows that let in abundant light. The wraparound porch held comfortable rocking chairs, and a playground sparkled with new equipment in the side yard. Flowers bloomed everywhere, Amara's special touch, bringing color and life to every corner. Inside, 12 fully furnished apartments waited for families in need. The children's reading room that Amara had suggested was filled with books and cozy bean bags. A computer lab offered job training resources, and the prayer garden she'd designed provided a peaceful retreat. Every detail spoke of hope and dignity. At exactly 10 o'clock, Hunter stepped up to the small podium they'd set up near the entrance. The crowd fell silent, and Amara moved closer, Faith sleeping peacefully against her shoulder. The morning sun caught the silver ribbon waiting to be cut, making it shimmer like a promise. "Welcome, everyone," Hunter began, his voice warm and steady. "A wise person once told me that sometimes God hides blessings inside our deepest wounds." He glanced at Mrs. Darlene, who dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "This place, Faith's Haven, stands for second chances. It's for those the world forgot, those who need to be reminded that their worth isn't measured by their circumstances." He paused, his eyes finding Amara's in the crowd. "I learned that lesson myself this past year, through the courage of someone who showed me what true grace looks like. Someone who taught me that real strength isn't about power or position. It's about getting up every morning and choosing to believe in goodness, even when the world gives you every reason not to. Faith stirred in Amara's arms, making a soft, cooing sound that carried in the quiet morning air. Several people smiled, and Hunter's eyes softened as he looked at his daughter. "This shelter is named after my daughter, Faith," he continued, "because faith is what builds bridges over impossible gaps. Faith is what turns strangers into family. Faith is what makes new beginnings possible." He gestured to the building behind him. "Inside these walls, women and children will find more than just shelter. They'll find dignity. They'll find support. They'll find people who believe in them. Every apartment is fully furnished. Every program is designed to help rebuild lives, because everyone deserves the chance to write a new chapter in their story." Amara felt tears welling up as Hunter stepped back from the podium. He turned to her, extending his hand. "Amara," he said softly, "would you lead us in prayer?" She handed Faith carefully to Mrs. Darlene and walked to the front, her heart full to bursting. The morning sun warmed her face as she closed her eyes and lifted her voice. "Dear Heavenly Father," she began, her words carrying clearly across the lawn. "We thank you today for turning pain into purpose. We thank you for the way you weave hope through our darkest moments. We ask your blessing on this place. May it be a sanctuary of peace for every soul who enters. May your love flow through these halls like living water. May your grace touch every life that finds shelter here." She opened her eyes, looking at the gathering of people, social workers, volunteers, future residents, all joined together in this moment of possibility. "And Lord, we thank you for the reminder that no story ends in darkness when you're writing it. In your precious name, amen." The crowd echoed the amen, and Hunter stepped forward with the silver scissors. The ribbon cutting was simple but profound. One quick snip, and Faith's haven was officially open. Applause broke out as the doors swung wide, revealing the warm interior with its fresh paint and welcoming furniture. As people began moving inside to tour the facility, a group of children from the local shelter, who would be among the first residents, gathered on the porch steps. Their young voices lifted in a gospel hymn that Mrs. Darlene had taught them, sweet and pure in the morning air. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." Amara couldn't hold back her tears as the children sang. Each word seemed to echo her own journey, from lost to found, from darkness to light. She felt a gentle touch on her arm and turned to find Hunter standing beside her, his own eyes bright with emotion. He didn't speak, just nodded quietly, a wordless understanding passing between them. In that nod was every unspoken promise that the past was behind them, that Grace had indeed had the final word, that their shared journey had led them exactly where they were meant to be. Mrs. Darlene approached, still holding Faith, who had awakened and was watching the singing children with wide, wondering eyes. "Look at that," Mrs. Darlene said softly. "She's already singing in her heart." Hunter took his daughter gently, cradling her close as the morning sun painted them all in gold. The children's voices soared higher, carrying their song of amazing grace into the perfect autumn sky. And in that moment, standing together on the threshold of Faith's haven, they were more than just three people and a baby. They were living proof that love could build bridges, that truth could heal wounds, and that faith could, indeed, move mountains. The gospel hymn floated on the breeze, blessing every corner of the property with its message of redemption and hope. And Faith, secure in her father's arms, reached out one tiny hand toward the music, as if already understanding that she was part of a story much bigger than herself, a story of grace, second chances, and love that had overcome every obstacle to bloom in unexpected places. The late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the freshly mowed lawn of Faith's Haven as the last guests departed. Hunter watched from the porch as Mrs. Darlene's car disappeared down the winding driveway, her handkerchief waving from the window one final time. The day's excitement had settled into a peaceful quiet, broken only by bird song and the gentle rustle of leaves. Inside, Amara was gathering Faith's things for their evening walk, a soft blanket, a tiny hat against the cooling air, and the special stuffed lamb that already seemed to comfort the baby. Hunter smiled as he watched her move with such natural grace, humming softly to Faith, who lay contentedly in her portable bassinet. "Ready for our walk?" he asked, stepping inside. The lake house had become their sanctuary over these past months, its rooms filled with new memories that somehow made the old ones sweeter rather than bitter. Amara nodded, lifting Faith carefully into her arms. She just had her bottle. Perfect timing for a sunset stroll. They made their way down the familiar path to the lake, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm. The water stretched before them like polished glass, reflecting the evening sky in brilliant golds and roses. Faith was wrapped snugly in her blanket, her dark eyelashes fluttering as sleep began to claim her. "I can't believe how much has changed," Amara said softly, adjusting Faith's blanket. "A year ago I thought I'd lost everything. Now—" She paused, looking out over the water. Hunter understood the weight of that unfinished thought. "Now we have everything that matters," he completed gently. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their shoulders occasionally brushing. The path curved around a stand of old oak trees, their branches creating delicate patterns against the sunset sky. "You know what I was thinking about during the ceremony today?" Hunter asked, his voice thoughtful. "All those empty rooms in Faith's Haven, they're not really empty at all. They're full of possibility. Every bed, every cradle. They're waiting to hold someone's fresh start." Amara smiled, the expression reaching her eyes. "Like mine was? When you gave me a chance?" "That was different," Hunter said, stopping to face her. "You gave me something far more valuable than I ever gave you." "What's that?" "Hope." His voice grew softer. "After Lila died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part where joy feels natural, where love doesn't carry grief's shadow. I buried myself in work, in reputation, in careful control." He reached out to touch Faith's cheek as she slept. "I never believed I'd feel peace again." Amara shifted Faith gently in her arms, her eyes meeting Hunter's. "But you do now?" "Yes," he said simply, "because you showed me that healing doesn't replace love. It expands it, makes room for more without diminishing what came before." They resumed walking, the lake's edge guiding their path. A family of ducks glided past, creating gentle ripples in the golden water. "We'll teach her that," Amara said, looking down at Faith. "And all the children who come through Faith's Haven. That kindness matters more than power. That grace is stronger than judgment." Hunter nodded, his hand finding the small of her back as they walked. "They'll learn from the best. You've lived it." The sun was settling lower now, casting long fingers of light across the water. Faith stirred slightly, making those small, contented sounds that never failed to melt their hearts. "Sometimes," Amara whispered, leaning against Hunter's shoulder, "I think God sends storms just to wash our hearts clean." Her voice held both memory and gratitude. All those dark days, they were preparing us for this light. The wind stirred the trees softly, carrying the scent of pine and late summer flowers. Above them, the first stars were beginning to appear in the deepening blue of twilight. Faith sighed in her sleep. Her tiny fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. They turned back towards the lake house, walking slowly, savoring the peace of the moment. The porch light had automatically clicked on, casting a warm glow that seemed to welcome them home. Hunter thought about all the evenings ahead, quiet moments like this, watching Faith grow, building their shared dream of helping others find their way back to hope. As they climbed the porch steps, the light wrapped around them like a gentle embrace. Through the windows, Hunter could see the piano where Amara had first sung, the couch where they'd planned Faith's haven, the corner where Faith's bassinet now stood. Once empty spaces now filled with life and purpose. The house had never felt more like home, not because it was perfect, but because it held their story of redemption. Every room echoed with the truth they'd discovered together, that love born of mercy was the strongest kind of all. They stood there on the porch, the three of them, as dusk settled softly around the lake. The world felt full again, of grace, of second chances, of quiet joy that had been earned through tears and trust. Their hearts, like their home, were finally whole. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.